All right. So thanks for coming. In case you don't know me, Jigar Solanki. I work at on Reach team upstairs. Most of my programming that I do is in JavaScript. So a lot of like heavy front end technology that we use in Reach. I came across this new library Polymer a couple of months ago, and I looked into it. I watched a couple of videos, and it really looked. It blew my mind. Like the way they explained what web components are and how we should use it and to build our application. It really like interested me the most. So I kind of like wanted to do some research and I did some research and I wanted to like kind of share my learnings with you guys. So here we are, Polymer. Before we get into Polymer, I know Brad gave a talk on web components several months ago. So how many of you actually heard of web components? All right, most of you. In case you don't know, web components are kind of a set of emerging standards that allows developers to extend HTML and its functionality, right? Well, it's a lot of definition, right? But it's basically nothing but like a specs that that browser needs to implement. It's a set of specs. Okay. Thanks, Dave. Okay. Cool. So before we get into like like what web components are, I want to like take a time here, and I want to show you guys. So I created a web application just for you guys, just for the presentation. Okay. So I want to go back in time. And just look at this. Like I was watching one of the video, and they showed the really simple HTML element, which is a select, right? So here's the code for that. So if you look at the HTML, there's really nothing going on there, right? You have a select box, a select tag, and a bunch of options. It's very declarative. There's no CSS, no JavaScript. But when I render this thing in a browser, it just works automatically, right? Like we don't have to worry about any CSS. There's hover effect. When you select this thing, it shows up this pop-up. We don't have to worry about anything. Browser knows what to do with that syntax, right? You can go crazy with it. You can so like let's say Austin. By the way, these are the locations that Reach team has. So if you want to, let's say I want to like stop Austin. I think it's so. Look what it did. It disabled that option for you, right? I didn't have to do anything. I just have to like declare that option is disabled. So browser automatically knows all those steps. And another thing you can do is up group. You can just put those. Wow, the microphone is really throwing me off. And you can, so you can kind of like all the options, you can group them and you can, give it a label. Let's say, USA, copy and paste.
Yeah, close the tag. Yeah, we're going to get that too.
Don't worry about it. Brazil, there we go. Alright, it was a really bad idea to code in front of you guys, but there's more to come. So. Alright, so what did it do? It kind of grouped all the options based on what I declare, right? Like I want all the cities to be under USA, like all the US cities to be in the USA option, and so it kind of does like it's very declarative, right? That's the whole point. Like I don't have to worry about writing any additional logic for it to work, right? It just happened. Browser knows about it. So so that's and this has been there ever since we can think of like web forms, right? Or creating a forms or web elements. In the browser. So now going back to the slide. So what really happened, right? Well, this happened. I didn't want to point out what web application is this, but in Reach, well, never mind. In Rackspace, so we have this similar menu, right? You can see like it has a similar group options and stuff. But if you look at the markup for that, well, you can't really see, and neither can I. But it's all divs, and there were like 4 layers of div before we actually start like putting some text for the element, right? So it's really not like maintainable. Most of the logic is in JavaScript. Your HTML almost becomes like some ugly dump, right? You just like put something together and put it to UI and do something with it, right? So what's the problem? The problem is as we grew in the web, we want to have rich components. We want to have a better user experience, and every application can come up with like their own components, and web standards cannot meet those, right? They cannot create components for us, right? So what we're really looking for here is the way for us to like create our own components, and we can use these components like anywhere else, right? Just similar to HTML select box, right? I want to have a region select. This is what we call. I want to have a similar region select where I can use it anywhere else, in reach, in backup database, even in like AppCP, anywhere, just in case in future, right? We should be able to use that, right? You don't have to invent the wheel for making all this crazy markup, right? Another cool thing about select box is it's a framework agnostic, right? You can hook use that element with your Angular, with your Clojure, and pretty much any JavaScript language, or even like plain vanilla, right? Or vanilla JavaScript. But this one is written in Clojure, right? So even if we have figure it out how to build this thing, we can't really give it to somebody else who's using Angular or some other framework, right? So that's where the web components really comes into the picture. So what web component says, all right, we will let you create custom elements that you can share with other people or other applications, but it requires this kind of 4 set of standards, right? Or this 4 specification needs to be implemented in the browser before you actually start doing that thing. So these are the main 4 things. I think there are a couple of others, but these are actually the main ones that are like currently being like worked on in different browsers. So shared DOM, everybody know shared DOM is basically, we'll learn about all of these in details later, but just to give you like some definition, shared DOM really allows you to like encapsulate your HTML within your widget. It kind of creates its own DOM, like isolated DOM that doesn't really interact with your main DOM. So your element has its own HTML. It doesn't like bleed any CSS or any other markup outside of that DOM. So it doesn't like spoil the entire page. It just happens for your component. HTML templates. It's most of the frameworks. Angular has its own templating solution. Knockout. There's Mustache and several other we use soy templates. So web component asks us for like have a native some native HTML implementation in order for web components to work. Custom elements. You want to be able to define. Browser needs to know what a custom element is and when it come across a new element that it doesn't know about, how to go about it, like where to go create that element from, right? So an ability to like for browser to know what custom element is and what to do with it. HTML import. So traditionally we import JavaScript and CSS into our application. What HTML import does, it allows you to import HTML, reuse HTML within a different HTML. So that's what HTML import is. Okay, so those are the 4 standards that we saw, right? These are the requirements for the web components for us to like start writing web components now. Okay, so where are the browsers, right? So this is I just copied this graphic from one of the Polymer talk. But what this really tells us is like so you can see like Chrome is really in pretty advanced. Like it's if it's very dark, then they already have implemented that's a web spec in the browser. IE is always it's last. However, there is hope. There is really hope. I actually have a link for this. So this is a site where you can go and see what is the status of the web components status of the IE browsers are. So this one really tells like these 4 elements, they are all under consideration. So at some point, like they're thinking about it seriously. Like at some point, it will happen. I think it's 11 plus. So we should expect an IE 12 or 13 should implement these. Anyways, it's something cool that I came across. Great, man. There you go. Okay. Cool. All right. So this matrix was really looking bad like a year ago, but now it's not that bad. I think people are seriously thinking about all these specs and implementing it in the browser. So it's picking up really fast. So now that we all know what web components are and what is a specification for the web components, let's dig into like Polymer and what Polymer is. So Polymer is literally a library utilizing web components for building elements and applications. So it's built on top of web components. It expects web components to be implemented before you start using Polymer, right? But you might say but none of the browsers implement those, right? Nothing is has implemented all 4 of those, right? So how can we use Polymer? And that's where this diagram comes to the picture. I see this diagram pretty much in every video that you see. At the first, it was really confusing to me, but now that you did a little bit of reading, and it really makes sense to me for now. So we'll go through this layer. But if I had to break down Polymer into 3 different layers or into layers, I would have basically three main layers. The red one you see is Polyfill library. What Polyfill library does is, like I said, native browsers do not implement those web specs. What Polyfills does is it implements those web specs for those browsers. So in IE, if there is no shadow DOM, if you use platform.js, now IE has a shadow DOM, right? And that's why that's pretty much what it is. Polymer is a yellow bar that you see. It's built on top of that library. So in order to use the Polymer, you have to use platform.js. We'll talk about what Polymer API layer is, and then Polymer team also built the UI component that you can start using now for your web application, which of course are built on top of Polymer. So we'll go through this layer real quick. I'm not going to go through each and every spec, but if you have any questions, let me know. But so what platform.js does is it enables you to use the future technology right now, even though the browser hasn't implemented yet. So if you look at here and at the bottom, it's not even, right? Different browsers have different technology implemented. What platform.js does, it smoothens this out, right? If you do not have the technology, I'll build it for you. So you can use this and work with any browsers. Eventually, it will shrink as web browsers implement those specs. You should see this giant red bars shrinking below, and eventually it will go away when all the browsers have all the functionality. So this is really cool because now I don't have to worry about when I implement something or Firefox implements something. I can just import platform and it's just gonna work, right? The Polymer layer is built on top of polyfills. By the way, the fun fact about polymers is it's developed by Google, but it's also used by Xtag library. I think they recently announced it. Xtag is again a kind of a library built on top of web components or built for web components. So they started using polyfills as well for the implementation. So Polymer layer is the yellow bar that you see. What this really is kind of a sugaring layer on top of web components. They think the web components it's very primitive. They allow you to do cool stuff, but they're still very primitive. It's really difficult to create for your own custom element, even if all the specs are defined for you or implemented for you, right? So it kind of gives you really handy tools and features for you to create a custom elements really fast, like rapidly, right? That's pretty much what it is. It's also very opinionated. They have this philosophy, and when they started creating Polymer, so the main philosophy was like everything is an element. They're crazy about this. They don't. I don't know if I'm 100% bought on this, but if you look at the library, they have elements for every single pretty much any task you can think of doing on the web app. Right from defining your layout to making XHR and rendering the data out to the page. For every single thing, using local storage, for every single thing, they have the elements defined for them. So they're really into this. They want to build very declarative HTML, an application that has super declarative HTML. Components all the way. They don't want you to write some just simple JavaScript script that works very in like one-off cases. They want you to like this library allows you to like go to the level that where every single thing is a component in your application. And the third thing is write less code, and that's really pretty much what web components are for, right? You don't want to reinvent the wheel over and over again. You can just like write something, solve the problem, and share it with the world or share it with any other application. One cool thing I want to show you is, all right, so no, I'm not going to do the stand-up. All right, so Google Map, right? So this is a Google Map. This one is just today. If you want to implement Google Map on your application, this is what you have to do. If you look at the page source for this one, so there's like really like a repetitive JavaScript. You just have to copy this code and just in order for a Google Map to show up in your application, right? And this one was written in Polymer. Okay, in case you haven't noticed, is Racksburg's address. The zoom level is wrong, but yeah, it would take you to the innovation drive. And look what that does. All you have to do is import platform.js, which will implement all the web browser for me, and the element that I want to, a definition of some element that I want to import, right? And this is the element that I'm using. Google Map. All I'm giving is latitude and longitude, and it just knows what to do with it, right? I don't have to care about like what CSS and what script to initiate and all that stuff. It just knows when page loads, do some stuff with it, right? Like the initializing and everything, it's taken care of. I don't have to worry about what API it's using and what Google Map API is. I don't have to interact with that at all. It's very simple, just very declarative, just like select example that we saw. Okay, cool. So that's what it is. So that was Polymer UI components. So they build again. Polymer comes with some UI components if you wanted to use, and some of the components are back forward. There you go. Core elements and paper elements. Core elements are basically I can show you. I have some demos for that too. So let's look at the core element first. So I have not written a single JavaScript for this, not a CSS. Actually, one line of CSS. But so these are the elements I'm just importing and started using. So this is an input example of an input box, right? There's some placeholder text, and I can just start importing those, right? There's some buttons. I put the Rackspace logo in there. There's some menu. Menu is really cool. All right. So I don't know. I thought I was making some RSVP app, but. Alright, so yeah, so look at that. Like again, it's as simple as doing select box. And if you look at the code for this thing, just for the select box, I want to show you guys this one. So all I did was I defined that I want a menu button, right? This is the icon that I want, and select the first item. That's what I did, right? And I defined I want to have 3 items within that menu. Right, and that's all I did. I didn't do any CSS or JavaScript. It just knows what to do with it, right? Binding all the events and everything. If you go and look at the Polymer website, they have like bunch of other elements. And here, as you can see, there are some crazy, like I said, they're super into elements. So you have core Ajax, core XHR, and animated pages and drag and drop, pretty much everything. So you don't have to worry about like building your own JavaScript. It just uses elements and it will just work for you. Oops. Wow, this. Okay. Similar thing is, let's close this guy. Paper element. What paper elements are, they are built on top of core elements. So they extend core element functionality and add some thematic to it. So as you can see, there's like fancy, like as soon as there's a focus, it shows this fancy graph, or sorry, the border, or what do you call it? It floats the placeholder and things like that, right? So if you look at the source code for this thing, yeah, this isn't the shadow down, but if you look at the page source, again, this is what it does, right? I define I want to use paper input element and the floating label, make it a floating label and placeholder is server name, and that's it, right? It'll take care of the rest of the thing. So you can start using these elements in your web application. Like now it's available for you, and again they are like a bunch of I think there are 100 plus elements in total that you can use. Yeah, some of them are really cool. Anyways. Okay, tabs, toggle, or like the toggle ones, and toast. Yeah, it's for you. All right, cool. Going back to the slide. So you might say, this is all cool, pro, but how do I actually start using this element, right? So let's just go. Right. So the first thing you want to do is install Bower. Use Bower. They really. You can use GitHub directly. You can download zip files, but Bower is really the recommended way to use and share your components, with the rest of the world. But for in this case, let's say I want to use core input, right? So I will do Bower install core input. You need to include your platform.js. You need to import the element that you want to use, right? So you download a core input using Bower. Now you need to include the definition of that element in your HTML file, right? And this is how you do it. This is where your HTML imports come to the picture. We are importing an HTML file, not the JavaScript or CSS, and just start using it. And it's as simple as that. Okay, we'll do some example right after this. There you go. So, all right. So that was how to use an element. So let's go about like how to create an element. Okay, cool. So let's start with simple example, right? So all I have right now is I imported platform.js and I imported Polymer HTML. I don't really need to do this. Well, in this case, I have to. Anyways, so this is the two things that I want to import. And now I can start defining my elements. So let's go with defining a really simple element like right? So this is just a really custom element. Now, browser, if you run this thing in browser, of course, browser doesn't know anything about it, so it wouldn't do anything with it. I think I have to do. So there's nothing in the browser because it doesn't know anything about it. So let's define let's declare a definition for that. So you would do Polymer element. So Polymer has an element that lets you create your new elements. It's kind of like meta element, but it's pretty cool. And so when you create a new element, you define what element you want to create. So in this case, I want to create my name, right? Now let's see what happens. And another thing is, for now, just assume that this is what you want to do. Template, and say Mishka. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So still, it didn't happen. What I was expecting that instead of this name, it would put Mishka in there, or it would replace this tag, or within that tag, it would put this template. But it didn't do that. Why? Because this is just a definition of the Polymer element. You need to register the element with the browser. The way you do it, there's two ways you can do it. You can do it in JavaScript, or again, declarative HTML. Since this element doesn't have much stuff, we'll just do it in HTML. So you just define no script, and this actually registers the element in your HTML. So if you do this, now you have Mishka in there, and you can pretty much let's create a couple more. Oh, I can just look at here. I kept looking at the screen. All right, so it created two elements, right? Now I wanna make it like more I want user to give me more input on that element, right? So what if I want to say Jigar here and blue here, right? What you can do here now, well, if you keep let's keep this way. If you refresh the page, still nothing happens. What happened here is it ignores everything that you put in here within those tag and replaces everything within that tag with this HTML, right? If you want this to be included at the part of this template, you need to have, I think content is the one. And now you can probably get rid of mesh now. Right? So now it's just Jigar and blue, right? Cool. Another cool thing about this is this is just HTML, right? What if I wanted to use, what if I wanted to like programmatically access those elements or create those elements? We can do constructor. Help me with the spelling if it's wrong. But yeah, constructor. And we can really like put anything foo bar or whatever, but I'm gonna, just for the consistency, I'm gonna say my name. So now what will happen is, if I open up my console, and I'll do, let's do document dot body append child. I rely on autocomplete a lot. And now, when I do, well, before I do this, let's do new. Since we did, you can create a new element using this constructor. Now there's a definition in the browser. I can use my name, and it creates that element for you, right? So now I can go back here and I can just do new my name, right? Well, this is going to be fun. Oh, yeah. Well, no, because there is no content, right? It just, so it actually did add the element, like it added the third element right here, but there was no content, so you can't really see it. Let's fix that. Anyway, so you can see like what it does, right? And so let's do another way. There's another way you can pass the data to your element is through attribute. So let's do that. Let's say I want to do name here. I'll say Jigar here, and right now, in order for your element to accept the attribute, you need to declare what kind of attributes are kind of valid, right? Or you want to take consideration. So there's another attributes, and you can say I want to accept name attributes, right? So now what you will do is hi. All right, so let's take a moment here and see what I did. So I on my element I defined that there's an attribute name that I will accept, and whenever user passes that name, it kind of automatically binds to this template, and it'll start using it. Let's see if this works. So yeah, this is really bad, but right. Okay, so. Another thing I want to show you is, let's create a new element A, and now just like any other input box, now A has now that attribute name. Well, this one is null because let's say test. Anyways, and then you can do. So what I did was I created a new element, set a name to the element, and then appended that element to the body, and now hi, my name is test, right? So what really happened here? What it does, well, this is actually content of the next slide. So let me go back to the slide, and the next one's here. Okay, so it really has an awesome data binding. The first one is element itself is a model. So just like any other good JavaScript framework like Angular or even Knockout, right? Whenever you bind something to a template, you always bind some view model to your template, right? In Angular, you have some scope that you bind to your HTML. In this case, the view model is the element itself is a view model. So any property that you have on the element itself, you can use those to in your bindings. In this case, we created a name which is defined on the property itself, and now we can start using name in that HTML. What? Hold on, let me. All right, this probably won't work because I haven't declared my elements yet. So I told you there's two ways to register an element. One, you can do no attribute. Another way is writing a script block, and you can just say Polymer my name. And this should just work. Yep. Okay, cool. So you want to make more, like, you want to have like some JavaScript in your HTML in your component, right? So this is where you do it. The first argument is the name of your tag, and the second one is it takes a hash, and this hash or this JSON object is help, or is nothing but your prototype. Like it puts all the data that you have on the prototype. So when I do like name, let's say foobar is my default name. So what happens is sometimes if I don't give the name and I say, let's just get rid of the measure now. It by default it uses the foobar, right? Because the name is defined on the prototype, and that's how you can set the default of your elements as well. So what really it is element itself is a model, or you can say view model.
Do you still have to have attributes if you're registering it that way with the script tag? Looks like no.
Like here?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, so it won't accept this thing. Now it will always do the foobar. Like if you do this. Sorry. It should always do foobar. It will just ignore the other one. There is another way. I think there's something called publish, and I think that this is a recommended way of doing this. When you have like lots of attributes, you can just define like name and foobar one. Let's see if this works. Yeah. So you can do this one too. Okay, cool. So let's go back real quick. Okay. So the template is a special tag. It's if you look at the thing that we did for our name tag, we created this root element template. So there needs to be always a one root element in your template. So this is where it your shadow DOM gets defined. Everything below that is a shadow DOM. We can only have one template tag as a root. It also used for if you want to do like a render dynamic content, right? Oh, this is a cool thing I want to show you guys. All right, so let's say I want to rename this thing to. Okay, let's do this. Sorry, let's do my names to. My names, right? And instead, I can pass in JavaScript array in here. And well, I'm gonna say mine. Well, let's say all names, right? Anyway, cool. So I will say all names. It's a default array. Now here's the thing. Okay, so I want to create a UL or basically a list for all my names in there. So li, right? I want to make this content very dynamic, right? So what I will do is I will use another template tag. Sorry, I just can't type. And I will do repeat. And just like if you use Angular or any other mess-like tags, you can do name in names, all names, right? And I can just do name here, right? It doesn't work. It's spelling right here. Well, you can do it like this one too. It doesn't have to be attribute. Let's do that back. think it might be this issue. I'm not sure. Let me try. Let's see if it works. Of course, there's an and. I think I might have a backup.
That's wise. Yeah, that's
The problem is I don't know where the backup is. Yeah. Okay. All right. So it's supposed to work, right? When you do this thing. Oh God, is that far? Big one. Okay, never mind. That's fine. So the point is, the polymer is smart enough to when you pass it in an array, the polymer is smart enough to like knows what kind of data it is, and it will convert that into that JavaScript object. For instance, when you pass in like this, it knows that that's an array, and it will make this one as an array to be used. So you can use. Well, this should work, but I don't know why it's not working. But you can use it like this because this is all names is an array now. You can also pass in the JSON object as well. However, there's a catch to it. If it had worked, I would have shown you. But when you expect some array and object, you always want to give some defaults defined in the prototype, and that's how Polymer knows what type of attribute it is. When you have default to like an empty array, it knows that I need to expect an array. If you pass in something garbage, it'll just ignore it or give you an error. Anyways, cool. So let me go this real quick. Declarative event handling. But I don't want to like type too much, but I can. Well, let's see if I have backup here. Events backup. There you go. Sorry. Do you want to? Okay, so I can just replace this, an example. Alright, let's start from the scratch. Here you go. And boom, we have everything ready. Okay, so what we have here is focus of our input, right? It is really simple. What I want to show here is now we can capture events and do event handling here. For instance, in this template, I only have one input box, right? And I can write this attribute called on focus out. So focus out is a browser event. So if you go back to the slide, it will tell you that any on event. So this is a syntax. An event could be any browser event, right? That is eligible for that element. So input has a focus in and focus out. So you can define for focus out, run this function, and this is a function that you define here on your prototype. For focus in, run this guy, and we'll define here. So if you run this thing in browser. Got focus and you lose focus, it fires events accordingly. So it basically executes those functions. This is another way you can do data bind or event binding within your element. Change water. This is another way you can it's kind of like observers and knockout, if you will. So it's or computer, if you will. So anytime a property changes, it fires up this event automatically. So if a property name is let's say name. If you have a function called name changed, it will fire up that event anytime the name changes in your DOM or programmatically. It will fire up or call that function. Expressions are again a thing that you can do within the tags. So these are all the expressions you can do. Value equals I can just do. I don't know if I can do this. We'll find out. Yep, we can do this. So it's basically all the string operation. Pretty much you can. It supports pretty much all the regular expression. Oh, sorry, JavaScript expression that you can think of within those tags. You can also use some filters. So at some point, if you want to do some I want to use on the value. I want to use uppercase or something. And you can define. I'm pretty much sure this is not work. I was trying to make this work. Well, let's do this. So if I do, let's say I have a div, right? And here I have a name name in that. And if I want to do some filter over here, let's say I want to do uppercase, right? No matter what you pass it in, I'm gonna use a filter uppercase here. And all you have to do is define a function here, uppercase on your and this, and return some value that you want. So I think in JavaScript I think you can do to uppercase, and let's give some default. So your name would be some name. If you refresh the page, yep. So you can write your own custom filters and do things as well. Okay, cool. So let's pursue this real quick. So we learned about like how awesome the data binding is in Polymer, right? Great. How to extend the element. Again, I'm not gonna write the whole thing, but given an element, you can extend the functionality of the element. Well, let's try one small thing, right? Since we have a little bit more time. Sorry, I don't want to hold you guys, but I'm so excited about this, so I want to show you. So what this guy really does is, it makes this element in uppercase, right? What I want to do is I want to create a new element called, well, let's keep its name, even though it doesn't make sense. Focus input h2 or header, right? Some crazy element. I have a boom. So that's why sometimes I hate Mac. No, Mac is the best. Alright, so here we go. So I create a new element real quick. Constructor, I don't really care about constructor right now. I created a focus aware input header element. Really doesn't make sense, but I want to extend this element. I want this element to be extended, or to extend this guy, focus aware input, right? So I can just do this. And I want to define a new template. I want to say your name, right? And I can just use the name attribute from the previous template, right? See what happens here. I didn't change the actual element. So this is my actual element. So it uses the name property from the parent element and do that. What if I wanted to keep the same thing? What if I had something like my name is this, right? Well, this is a silly statement, but that's okay. I mean, it doesn't make sense together. It still prints out your name and the name. It doesn't print out this thing. Why? Because it just ignores your parent's template. It overrides this thing. If you want to include your parent's template, you can do that by doing, just like in Angular you do transclude, right? Here you can do, I think it's content. Oh, I think it's a shadow down, or God damn it. Extend backup. Oh, there's no backup, damn it. Alright, so let's start with the shadow. It's okay. It's okay, guys. We got this. Yeah, there you go. So shadow works. So it tells it's kind of like calling a super template, right? Your parents' template. So it says like whatever shadow template you have from the parents, put it over here, and that's how we can extend the element as well. And you can override some functions here, and this just like what you do in JavaScript or any other language. Okay, cool. So going back, so this is how we can extend the element.
What's the use case for
the
inheritance there?
So
why would you always prefer just to reuse your original element inside of?
So the best example is like one that I showed here, right? Your paper element, right? So if you look at the input here, it has this fancy thing. It still uses the core input. It extends the core input. So your input function stays the same, but like if you want to add some more theme to it, right? I want to have the border, and I want to float the server name or the placeholder. You can extend your input.
You can't do the same thing. You can't achieve the same thing with just composition. Like, rather than extending core input, just using the core input tag inside your element.
Yeah, I guess we can do that too.
Is there like guidance on when to do which?
Not really. It's totally depends on like your use case, right? Like, yeah, I don't know if there's like a specific guidelines, but there's a way to do that if at all you need it.
Good as that.
Okay, so I'm gonna go through this real quick, and I'm like 1 or 2 slides left. But so this is element lifecycle. So just like if you use Clojure, you guys know like there's an enter document, create DOM, and all this good stuff, right? Polymer has its own lifecycle as well. So for instance, created is when you create an instance in JavaScript, it will execute that function. So you can like do some setup in there if you wanted to. Ready is when your template is ready. Attach is when you actually attach the element to the DOM. This function will get called, and things like that. I don't know what exactly DOM ready does, but you can find like lots of documentation on that. But yeah, so there is a life cycle for that too. Detach is when you to exit document or remove the DOM or element from the DOM. The last thing I want to really point out is like now people may think I already have like a full-fledged application written in Angular or or in Clojure, right? I can't like afford to like rewrite everything in web components or Polymer. So how do I go about like migrating one small thing at a time, right? So these are some of like recommended ways of doing it. Well, actually, there's only 2 ways you can do that. But this is how you basically do your communication within the element or outside of the element. And data binding is, I had a couple of examples to show, but I'll probably pass on that. Data binding is basically like sharing, like just like sharing an observable between like multiple models that we do in Reach. You can do the same way. You can share an attribute within 2 elements, and that it'll just work for you, which is not that bad. Like in some cases, for instance, now I want to do sorry. All right, so here's like one simple example that I have that I can think of. So I have an input here. Let's say for some crazy reason I want to make this, I want to whatever input, whatever name you put in, I want to store it into local storage, right? So what happens is, I have an input, I bind my value attribute to that input, and I'll also use core local storage, which is an element that Polymer provides. I use that and I share the attribute with this. So anytime I type this in, it will just work, right? It will persist on my local storage. I think I can just copy the whole thing and put it into my example. So if I go back here, I think so. If I refresh the page, the name is saved locally, right? Anyways, so so sometimes it's not that crazy to like share within the element. The biggest drawback for this is like you cannot do this sharing outside of Polymer. It happens only within the Polymer elements. So that's one of the drawback. But change watches, we already talked about this. If you have a property, you can have a property change function, and you can just override those function in your application, right? And use those to detect any change happen within the element. Custom events. So every Polymer element, just like any other framework, there's a fire event you can do. So anytime you fire an event, wow, I already have ready to go. So so anytime value changes, it fires this value change event, and this is plain JavaScript, right? It doesn't have to do anything with the Polymer. All I'm doing is I'm grabbing the element and adding event listener on the element for this change. And it tells me, it actually returns me the entire object, and from here I can do like I think it's target dot value.
You can change it there. Back.
So what?
You can change it back there. I don't know what that would do.
Oh god, this is annoying. Oh yeah, anytime you change something, it will just fire the event, and we're just console logging it, right? So that's another recommended way of like interacting with the components. Using elements API, so like I said, like anytime we define an attribute or function, it is on the prototype, so we can grab the element and just start using those functions and properties in your application. All right, so last slide I have is some fact about it, right? So currently Polymer is in alpha. I'm not sure, they might have gone beta, but I think this was like 2 months ago. They want to have at least one browser to implement all the web spec before we go to beta. So hopefully, and I think Chromium is going to support pretty soon, sometime this year. So it's going to go beta pretty soon. Although it's in alpha, there are some companies who already use it. So for instance, GitHub, which was my surprise, but if on the GitHub.com, when you, well, they don't actually, I don't say they use Polymer, but they do use polyfills. So anything that you see here, the time tags, these are custom element. Well, time is an HTML element, but they extend time, and I think they do some stuff on it. And I know for sure Salesforce. So I watched a video where they build a whole application. So their customers they want to have a custom portfolio for their customers. So all the customers want to show their products and stuff. So they have these common widgets, and they created all the Polymer elements for those widgets, and all the customer have to do is just drag and drop and see how hook up with API, and that's it. Like just attribute, give the API endpoint, and things will just work for you in UI. So I think overall my take on this thing is I think it's a really cool technology. I think it's definitely gonna change the way we write HTML and the building an application. It's definitely going to reduce a lot of duplication and things like that. There are some challenges though, like I said, it's an alpha, and people needs to buy into all these technologies before we actually start using it, right? But yeah, so that's pretty much what my take was on Polymer. That's my custom element. Thank you. That's it.